Week 15 of the fantasy football season. Here's tight end sits every matchup this week. So the playoffs starting in most fantasy leagues. It's a crucial week, and you got to know who to put in your starting lineup or not. First matchup, Thursday Night Football. Los Angeles Chargers at the Vegas Raiders. So Gerald Everett, he's been a main target in this offense over the last few weeks. He's out in this ball game where Easton Stick will be the starting quarterback for this Los Angeles Charger team. So Gerald Everett with Easton Stick, I don't know if he could go out there and really put up big numbers. Obviously, all the bye weeks are done as well, where every tight end is playing. So this week, if you're in a pinch at tight end, at best, I have Gerald Everett a borderline option. Michael Mayer, he showed some flashes so far this rookie season, but this offense is inconsistent. Devontae Adams hasn't done much this season. Jacoby Myers hasn't done much. And this week, this Charger defense, believe it or not, versus bad offense this year, has delivered and held them down. This week, Michael Mayer, I don't see him really doing much, and he's a sit in this game for me. Next game, 1st of 3 on Saturday. Starting now with the Saturday games this week. Minnesota Vikings at the Cincinnati Bengals. TJ Hawkinson, we know he's one of the best tight ends in the league. This season, he's right up there, him and Travis Kelce in fantasy points at the position. And now we don't know if it's going to be Nick Mullins or Joshua Dobbs at quarterback for this Viking team. But TJ Hawkinson, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. He's a matchup every problem for safeties, linebackers. And this week, versus the middle of the pack Cincinnati Bengal defense, he's a start. Obviously, once again, Tanner Hudson, last few weeks, he's been emerging for this Bengal team with 8 or more fantasy points in the last 3 out of 4 games. So this week in a matchup versus a Minnesota defense, that definitely came off a shutout. But I don't see that happening once again, especially Jake Browning, who's been playing good football. Tanner Hudson in deeper leagues this week, I think is usable, but in your basic 10, 12, 14 months, he's borderline for me. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Indianapolis Colts. After you removed a few weeks ago, we had that big game, but he's just a tough tight end to trust. The last 3 out of 4 games, really haven't seen much out of Fiermuth. I know it's a decent matchup at the Indianapolis Colts, but in a big playoff spot for fantasy owners, he's a sit. Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox, they're pretty much touchdown dependable tight ends all season in this Indianapolis Colt offense. And with a tough matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't see them doing much. I know Hunter Henry had 2 touchdowns last week, but Hunter Henry's way more of a playmaker and a big part of his offense than Granson and Mo Alley Cox. So there sits Denver Broncos at the Detroit Lions. Adam Trautman, he had a nice touchdown late in that ball game for Russell Wilson and this Bronco team, where they sold out on the run in that game was the Los Angeles Chargers, and Wilson decided to pass and put the game on ice, and that's what exactly he did. So Adam Trautman, like I said, he's not much of a fantasy option. I know he's found the end zone a few times in the last 4 games, but this week at the Lions, I don't see him doing much. And this offense is built around running the football, short passes to the running backs, and hitting Cortland Sutton is the deep ball threat, pretty much. Sam Laporta start, one of the better tight ends already in his rookie season this year for the Detroit Lions. We know this Bronco defense has definitely improved over the last few weeks, but Sam Laporta is a tight end you go to each and every week. He's top 7 in fantasy points at the position, and once again, a start. Kansas City Chiefs at the New England Patriots. Travis Kelce, he's having a great season once again, but he's not having the elite, out-of-control season like he did over the last few seasons. So Kelce last week, even a bigger game if Kadarius Toney wasn't lined up off sides with that catch and then pitch lateral for the touchdown. But anyway, good matchup this week, Gillette Stadium. This is a big game for Kansas City. They've lost 3 out of 4, and after coming off a bad loss like they did versus the Bills, I think this whole team has a monster ball game. Hunter Henry, borderline option. Hunter Henry, he pretty much was a tight end that didn't do much for many weeks, but he came back with a vengeance last week on Thursday night with 2 touchdowns at the Steelers. But this week here in a tough matchup versus the Chiefs, one of the tougher defenses in the league, and tight end's not really doing much. He's a borderline option at best. I know he's the number 1-2 option most weeks in this offense, but he's still tough to trust even coming off a big game last week. New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. Tyler Conklin, the number 2 option this season here for this New York Jet team in the passing game behind Garrett Wilson and Tyler Conklin, borderline option. This Jet offense is inconsistent all season. I know they finally had a big game and broke out, putting up 30 points on the board in last week's victory versus the Texans. But Tyler Conklin, in a tough playoff matchup, it's tough to trust him for fantasy owners. Obviously, if your 14-team leagues are deeper, I would put him in the lineup. But your basic formats, 10 to 12-team leagues, he's borderline Durham Smythe. He's a sit. We haven't seen much out of Smythe all season. I thought coming into the year, he would go out there and have some decent fantasy days, but obviously that hasn't been the case this season. Chicago Bears At the Cleveland Browns, Cole Kmet, he's been a solid tight end option this season. He's putting up fantasy points, he's making receptions, and he's been a matchup problem for most defenses this year. So this week in a matchup versus the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland, I know they're one of the better defenses in the league. We don't really see tight ends do much besides last week Evan Ingram have a monster ball game, finding the end zone twice. Cole Kmet, I have confidence in him this week. And him and Justin Fields have a good rapport. He's a start. David Njoku, him and Flacco got on the same page in last week's game. He found the end zone twice as well versus Jacksonville Jaguars. And David Njoku, he's a freak athlete. He's a tight end that can line up on the outside, inside in the seam. And Flacco, a veteran quarterback, he knows where to get the football to the tight end. And his receivers in general, with corners can't get to it at times. So he's a start. Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. Dalton Schultz, he's missed the last 2 games with a hamstring injury. And this week, if he comes back in the game, he's definitely a start at the Tennessee Titans. They can't stop the pass at all. Dalton Schultz, a good route runner. He's got a knack for the end zone. And this Texan offense, the last couple weeks, the numbers have gone down, and that's because Dalton Schultz, in my opinion, has been out of the lineup. And also, Tank Dell out for the season, so if Schultz is back, more targets will come his way as well with Dell, and possibly Nico Collins out as well. Brevin Jordan, he's filled in pretty decently, but he's a tight end that's tough to trust in a Week 15 matchup for fantasy owners. And if CJ Stroud's out in this game, there's no way you could start Brevin Jordan at all. Chigaquango, he's starting to emerge over the last few weeks. But this offense is totally inconsistent and one of the worst offensive lines in the league for this Titan team. So Quango, we know he's a freak athlete. We know he's got great speed. We know he's a decent route runner. But this season, the numbers really haven't been there, even though I know over the last few weeks, for the most part, he's gone out there and he put up numbers and been a decent option for fantasy owners. But I still don't trust him as an option week in and week out. He's a sit. New York Giants at the New Orleans Saints. Darren Waller, if he's back in this ball game, he's a borderline option for me. Darren Waller, believe it or not, the numbers really weren't that good this season, the whole year for Darren Waller. Him and Daniel Jones weren't on the same page. And him and Tyrod Taylor, they had some decency in the offense. But Tommy DeVito, the starting quarterback for this New York Giant team. Darren Waller, he's been an injury problem throughout the last few seasons he's had. And this week at the New Orleans Saints, if he does come back, he's a borderline option. Daniel Bellinger, if he's the starter, if Waller don't come back, he's still a sit for me in this ball game as Daniel Bellinger. We really haven't seen much where it'll give fantasy owners confidence to go out there and put him in the starting lineup. Taysom Hill will start. We know Hill missed last week's game with the injury, so hopefully it was a one-week hiccup because he's the gadget guy in this offense. He could throw, he could catch, he could run the football, obviously being a goal line option. And this week versus the New York Giants, a middle-of-the-pack type of defense, he's a start. Jawan Johnson, besides 1 or 2 good games all season, we really haven't seen much, and there's no way fantasy owners should have confidence in Jawan Johnson, so he's an easy sit option this week. Next game, Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. So Kyle Pitts, he's a start. Last week, 36-yard touchdown. Had a solid ball game, over 12 fantasy points in PPR leagues is Kyle Pitts. We know he's a freak athlete. We know he was a top 10 pick a few seasons ago in the NFL draft for this Atlanta Falcon team. And if he had a better quarterback, this guy easily could be top 5, top 8 tight end each and every week. But this week, in a good matchup with a Panther defense that's given up a tons of points over the last few weeks, he's a start. Hayden Hurst, Tommy Tremble, these 2 tight ends pretty much aren't a factor in this offense for this Carolina Panther team. Besides a couple games, Hurst hasn't done much this year. Tommy Tremble's been a touchdown or nothing. And this offense just can't move the football. And Bryce Young, it's been a bad rookie season for him. So both these guys are sits. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Green Bay Packers. Cade Otton, it's been one good week, one bad week type of deal for Otton. The pattern's been this season. So this week at the Green Bay Packers in a potential shootout, even though this defense has been improving for the most part the last few weeks, Cade Otton's a borderline option. Him and Mayfield definitely have a good rapport. He's a big 6'7", 6'8" target in the red zone. We saw him score a big touchdown towards the end of the game and win it for the Bucs at the Falcons in the Week 14 game. And this week, he's borderline. Tucker Kraft is a sit for me. Tucker Kraft really hasn't done much in this offense. And Luke Musgrave possibly could return in this ball game. But even if Musgrave returns, he's a sit for me. This Packer team, they're more focused on getting the football, obviously, to their playmakers. Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson when he was playing, even though he missed last week's game. Jaden Reed, Wicks even in the offense as well. So Tucker Kraft, the numbers haven't been in there week in and week out consistent. So he's a sit. San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. Top tight ends going at it in this game. George Kittle, a great route runner. Found the end zone once again. Him and Brock Purdy have a great rapport. And this San Francisco offense, ever since that bye week, they've came out of it and they've won 5 games in a row once again. So this week, George Kittle, a start, and he's putting up huge numbers over the last month of the season. Trey McBride, a start for me as well. Trey McBride in his second year, he's really broken out, and he's Kyler Murray's main man on the offense since Murray's come back from injury over the last few weeks. So Trey McBride can run all the routes. He's a matchup problem for safeties and linebackers, and he was a top tight end to come out of college over the last few seasons. Washington Commanders at the Los Angeles Rams, Logan Thomas, he showed some flashes early in the season, but the last few weeks, the numbers haven't been consistent. The numbers haven't been there, but it wouldn't be surprising, honestly, if Logan Thomas did have a decent game, but what fantasy owner really has trust in him after he really hasn't done much over the last month of the season? So this week, even in a decent matchup at the Los Angeles Rams, we saw Isaiah Likely have a big ball game. He's a sit. Tyler Higbee banged up. We don't know if he's going to return in this game this week here versus the Commanders, but he's a tight end I'm not going to have confidence in. He'll be the 4th, 5th option on this offense anyway, behind Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams in the passing game. Even DeMarcus Robinson shown up the last few weeks as well, so he's a sit. Davis Allen, it was a breakout game for the rookie last week, finding the end zone, some acrobatics as well, leaping over defenders, but he's not an option week in and week out you're going to trust as well. He was a 5th-round pick, and he got an opportunity being the 3rd-string tight end, and obviously the Raven defense wasn't playing defense on him, and that middle of the field was open. So right now, Davis Allen, no doubt about it, showed a great outing. Even if he does get the starting nod in this game, he's a sit. Dallas Cowboys at the Buffalo Bills, possibly the game of the week here. Jake Ferguson, a start for me. He's one of the main targets in this Cowboy offense behind CeeDee Lamb, and he's a tight end that's going out there, and he's making all the big plays. He's hurdling defenders as well, and Dak Prescott has a lot of confidence in him, and he's a solid route runner, not scared to run the seam of the field, take a big hit, and still go as well. So this weekend, a potential shootout between these two teams. He's a start. Dalton Kincaid, rookie season, he's taken the league by storm. He's a 26 pick overall for a reason for this Buffalo Bill team. And this week here, I know it's a tougher matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. I still think he could find the middle of the field, because if it's one weakness of this Cowboy defense, it's a linebacking crew isn't all that great, and they have some problems in coverage at times. So Dalton Kincaid, number 2 target in the passing game, in my opinion, behind Stephon Diggs, and he's a start. Sunday Night Football, Baltimore Ravens at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Isaiah Likely, he's a start for me in this game. We know he's a playmaker. He's got breakaway speed. We saw a long touchdown last week for Likely. And Lamar Jackson in this Raven offense has a lot of confidence in him. So this week, once again, Isaiah Likely, as long as he's starting with Mark Andrews out, he's a start pretty much each and every week. Evan Ingram with a bounce back. Last couple weeks has been for him with 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games. Last week in a tough matchup with the Browns, he went in there and found the end zone twice. And this week in a potential shootout, an AFC matchup between top 2 teams here. Evan Ingram is a start for me. He's a great route runner. He can line up anywhere on the field as well. He could even take some end arounds at time as well. We've seen him do this season. And this week here, in a potential shootout, he's a start. And final game of the week, Philadelphia Eagles at the Seattle Seahawks. So Dallas Goedert, he returned last week. And I know the Philadelphia Eagles, they got the doors blown off at the Dallas Cowboys. But Dallas Goedert, good route runner. He works the middle of the field. He's got a knack for the end zone as well. And this versus a leaky defense, Seattle Seahawks, where George Kittle just had a big ball game. Dallas Goedert is a start, and Noah Fant's a sit. Noah Fant pretty much hasn't done much all season, especially week 15. Why would fantasy owners have any trust in him this week as well, where the first 14 weeks of the season, we really haven't seen much from him. So that's tight end start sits every matchup for week 15 of the fantasy football season.